Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is the third game in the main Borderlands series. The story takes place between events of Borderlands 1 and 2, making it a prequel to the sequel, hence the name. Call it Borderlands in space. Call it super glorified Borderlands 2 DLC. But we're going to call it a solid and satisfying game with the best co-op of the series. If you played Borderlands 2, you already know how Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is going to look and feel. Menus, animations, the little woo sound when a window opens, it's all the same. So we're not going to review the underpinnings of Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel. Instead, we're going to do something much more geeky, introduce the new features, and then start nitpicking. The story in Borderlands the pre-sequel is framed in a flashback told by Athena, one of the new playable characters. She's being questioned by Lilith and the other heroes of the first game, and boy, does she have a tale to tell. The vault has already been opened and General Knox is dead, but Handsome Jack has yet to become the evil, daughter-torturing madman we know him to be. This creates a comfy space to tell the story of Jack's rise to power and his subsequent fall into corruption. It also allows us to technically be the bad guys in a way. Now about those new characters. Athena, Wilhelm, Nisha, and Claptrap were NPCs in the previous Borderlands games, but for the pre-sequel, they're classed out and ready for action. One of the first things you'll notice is that the newbies have a much wider variety of skills than the characters from previous games, and it isn't as easy to drop them into neat little categories. However, you have skill trees that allow you to tweak your playing style so you're never locked into one particular battle strategy or weapon type. Borderlands the pre-sequel takes place on Pandora's moon Elpis. Now moons aren't known for an abundance of gravity or atmosphere, and this very neatly creates a foundation for fundamental changes in how the pre-sequel is played. Now for any character that isn't a robot, keeping a constant supply of oxygen is important for staying alive. Science has a clever solution to the whole breathing in a vacuum: Oz bubbles. Now these bubbles provide a limited supply of oxygen that can be refilled by walking over air vents, picking up oxygen canisters from fallen enemies, or by stepping into atmosphere bubbles generated by special machines. Oz kits can be found or purchased throughout Elpis and equipped to give your stats a tweak. Everything from O2 maximums to mid-air ability buffs are tied to these kits, making them a nice addition to the equipment screen. Another thing Oz kits play is into the ground pound, also known as the butt slam or the gravity-assisted rapidly descending aerial impact maneuver for when you're showing off at parties. Even though they look otherworldly, many of the creatures who inhabit Elpis are similar to those on Pandora. You'll find the analogs to things like skags, spider ants, and racks, but there are also moon-equipped bandits, psychos, badasses, and midgets. Humanoid enemies have oxygen bubbles of their own and love to jet around the sky, which can be frustrating when you're itching for a ground pound kill. Or, any kind of kill. Aerial combat was always clumsy in Borderlands, and Borderlands the pre-sequel makes the situation a little worse with the increase in airborne combat. With new enemies comes new weapons. Borderlands the pre-sequel adds 2 new categories of guns to the mix: lasers and cryo. Lasers are their own type of gun that come in several shooty varieties, such as the Star Wars style blasters and Ghostbusters style wave zappers. We tried crossing the streams, nothing special happens. Borderlands the pre-sequel is built on a Borderlands 2 frame, meaning everything from badass ranks to the storage bank is still around. The list of added features is just the right size for a pseudo-sequel, so the game has enough new bait to attract seasoned players with the rich smell of co-op looting. Despite the butt slams, laser weapons, and oxygen meters, you'll still encounter some moments when the game feels a little too much like its predecessor. Missions that don't take place on the moon are especially bad, as ground pounds and Oz attacks are practically gone. This doesn't detract from the game as a whole, but it does dull that feeling of freshness you get when diving into a brand new game. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that this isn't Borderlands 2. The writing in Borderlands the pre-sequel is a notch above Borderlands 2. 2K Australia brought in some of their own talent to help script the pre-sequel, and their efforts definitely show. One of the more noticeable changes is how Australian the dialogue feels, something you wouldn't expect is possible from a sci-fi shooter on a moon.
And I sang as I watched as my billy boiled. Then up leapt the jumbuck. I grabbed him with glee, and I shoved him in me tucker bag. But then I returned from the distant land, and I went, and I lost at camp not far from here.
What the hell is he talking about?
I have no idea.
From the jokes to the slang, to some of the names, it's obvious that this game came from down under. Along with the writing comes plenty of spoken dialogue from the playable characters. A few reaction lines and idle comments was pretty much all the characters had to say in previous Borderlands games, but now they practically have entire conversations with NPCs. This makes the storytelling a lot less one-sided, and the personalities hold up to this extra attention. Even the lovable failure Claptrap, and his pathetic attempts at not being pathetic. Now for the big question. Did Borderlands the pre-sequel add enough to make it a distinct product? The answer is yes. Take the new features in with the subtle tweaks, and suddenly Borderlands the pre-sequel has a style all its own. It still shares plenty of core elements with its predecessor, but just because two people have the same skeleton, internal organs, and cheesy haircut doesn't mean they're the same person. The pre-sequel is Borderlands 2 close cousin. They grew up together, built blanket forts and treehouses together, but then the pre-sequel went to high school on the moon. Now they're back together and they have rediscovered what they got along so well with in the first place. Feel free to invite the pre-sequel over for dinner even though you've had Borderlands 2 over every Thursday for the past 2 years. They'll tell some of the same stories, but the pre-sequel learned several neat tricks on the moon and has plenty of its own stories to share.